Robert Castillo Montero. I serve in the Army active back in 1994, and then in 2003 I joined the Army National Guard. I have been serving, still continually serve, for the last 20 and a half years. So I chose the Army because of my dad, essentially. My dad was in the Army National Guard when I was a kid, and as for as long as I can remember, I've wanted to be an Army soldier, and so the Army is where I went immediately after I could. I'm originally from Puerto Rico, and so when I was about 6, I got to go to the Bahamas. My dad worked for a pharmaceutical company, and then we went back to Puerto Rico, and then when I joined the Army, I went to Hawaii. So by the time I was 21, I've been to 3 islands that everybody wants to go visit, so that was the good part. Then shortly after that, in 1996, I came to Pryor, Oklahoma, out of all places that I stayed. So I've been in the Midwest for the last 25 years or so. But with the Army, I've had the ability to go to Peru. I spent 2 to 3 weeks out there. I've been to Panama multiple times, 3 or 4 times. I've been to Haiti. I was in Haiti back in '95, so before the hurricanes and the earthquakes, but it was still just as poor. And then I spent a year in Egypt, in the Sinai of Egypt, where I got to go see the Giza Pyramid and Luxor, but I also got to go to Jerusalem and see Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and travel in that area as well. So it was just a really great experience. My travel to Egypt was one of my favorite memories. I went there because they needed a Spanish interpreter in Egypt, which seemed kind of weird. But once I got there, I realized that there was a group of a battalion of Colombians and a battalion of Uruguayans that needed interpreting. So I got to interpret for them during that time and made so many great friendships there was 15 nations there. So I made so many friends across the way, and my favorite memories there probably come from there. Essentially, that's where God called me in the ministry as well. And so it started that journey in which I'm in now, almost 10 years later. And so it was the desert where the 40 years that the Israelites walked, it was in that very same desert that we were at. So I thought it was just such a great experience, and I absolutely loved it. Life lessons, there is so many, so many. One is do the things right the first time. Because there's many times that we would do something, whether it was in basic or even just when we were at the unit, and you tend to just do it halfway, don't really quite do the whole thing. When you do that, you always end up doing double the work, just double the work. My mom used to say that the lazy people always does double work, and that's true, because they do it lazily the first time and then they end up having to do it again. I learned how that you can have so many commonality across so many different cultures. And the military is just so many different cultures, from so many different people from different states and even from different countries. So getting to meet those people and talk to them, you get to learn so much just about other people. I got to learn that when you're trying to lead soldiers, you have to have a relationship with them. And it transfers just as well when you're trying to lead students. If you don't have a relationship, it's just a person just talking in front. But when you have a relationship and you really invest in them, then they actually are able to follow your advice. And then last, I would say that being able to lead by doing. You can't just tell them what to do. You can't expect someone to do something that you're not willing to do. We had to clean porta potties one time, and I didn't know what that entailed. Never really had to clean a porta potty before that. And when we went to go clean the porta potties, I asked the guy, "So what do we do first?" He goes, "Well, you got to grab that right there where you empty out the porta potty with the tube and undrain it." I was like, "All right, guys, go ahead and do it." And everybody looked at me like, "Oh, I don't want to do that." I was like, "All right, well, I'm the leader. If I can't grab that hose and get it connected and get it undone, they're never going to follow me and do what I say." And that's what I did. Never had any problems telling any of my soldiers to go do a task because they knew I was always willing to do it first. The military is such a great place, and a great place not only to get out of your comfort zone, which is where you grow. You don't grow when you're comfortable. When you sit on the couch, you don't grow. You learn that when you're uncomfortable, that's exactly when you grow. I learned responsibility. Before that, I was just a teenager. I was a consumer, not a contributor. I was just consuming what was presented to me, including in my household. But the reality is that life out there, in life, you need to be a contributor. You need to contribute. we've gotten so far away from that at times that we don't really realize that in the military really gives you that ability to learn that. Because when everybody contributes, the work is easy and the work can be fun, and you get everything done on time and you get the things done right the first time. But when you become a consumer, you just don't always get the things done the way they're supposed to. And so the military has really shown me so much, plus the ability to travel, the things that you learn, and hey, who doesn't like to shoot guns and blow up things? Just saying.
I served in the United States Air Force, specifically the Air National Guard in Tulsa, and then later in the Air Force Reserves attached to Tinker Air Force Base. My first enlistment was 7 years, and my second enlistment was 6 years, so I served for a total of 13 years. During my first enlistment in the Air National Guard, I traveled to Alaska for a 2-week tour of duty, TDY. That was amazing. It's like visiting a foreign country, but everybody speaks English. I also had a chance to travel to Germany for a 2-week TDY. I originally chose to join the Air National Guard because both of my parents were in it. And my mom had talked me into joining. They had just offered a tuition waiver for students who wanted to go to college. And so I was trying to finish my degree. So this was a great way for me to be able to afford to go to school. It took me a really long time to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. My job in the Air National Guard was photographer and videographer, and I really enjoyed that. But I had my first child, and I wanted to be able to stay home. So once my kids were born, I decided I wanted to become a teacher. But that was several years later. My favorite memory, there are so many. I enjoyed my trip to Alaska, and we were there during Labor Day weekend, and they had given us the weekend off, which typically in the military you don't get days off, but we had a 3-day weekend. There was a group of us that rented some cars and some camping equipment, and we drove down to Valdez, and when we were coming back, because we were in the middle of Alaska at Fairbanks, we almost hit a moose who was crossing the road. It was really scary. A life lesson that I have learned through the military that I try to instill upon my students is to operate with integrity. Integrity is one of the core values of all of the military branches. So everything that you do, you operate with integrity, and I try to teach that to my students on a daily basis. The military is an amazing opportunity. If you have a thought about joining, I urge you to consider it. Perhaps part-time Air National Guard or Army National Guard is a great choice for you if you want to do this. Thank you.
My name is Bryan Warren. I served in the U.S. Army. I was a reservist. I served for 8 years, and I served between the 2 Gulf Wars. I took my friend to the recruiter who wanted to get in, and so while I was there, they asked me to take a test, and I did. I scored well, and a month later, I was in the Army. My dad was in the Army, and so I thought, well, it was good enough for my dad, it was good enough for me. I didn't go anywhere cool. One of the beauties of being a reservist is you only serve 2 days in the month and for a couple weeks, and my unit never deployed anywhere cool. A school appropriate memory. Okay, so don't talk about the fight in the barracks. For me, it was what the Army gave me. It's not one particular memory, it's what the Army gave me. When I went into the Army, I was a knucklehead. I did not make good grades, I did not take school seriously, I didn't take much seriously, I didn't have a lot of drive and dedication. And what the U.S. Army gave me was a desire for excellence. So there's not one memory, but what those drill sergeants did and what my officers and senior enlisted did for me, they made me who I am today, and I'm so grateful for them. I would say the life lesson I learned from the Army was to work hard. Work hard, play hard. As a matter of fact, my children were so tired of me saying that, because that's what I say. Work hard, play hard. Have a good time with what you do, but get your work done first and do it with excellence. What I would tell you is the same thing I told my oldest son who joined the Army also, was that you will get out of the military what you put into it, and it will make, if you give it a chance, if you give the military a chance and you give it who you are, it can make you a better version of yourself.